My name is Hilda. I am 60 years old, and never in my worst nightmares could I have imagined the betrayal that unfolded just 3 days ago. The memory clings to me with every breath I take, every time I close my eyes. It begins with the sound of laughter, innocent, joyful laughter that echoed on the mountain trail as my family and I hiked together. Birds chirped in the distance, the crisp morning air was filled with the scent of pine, and the golden sun painted the valley below. It should have been a beautiful day, a celebration of our 40th wedding anniversary. Instead, it became the day my son tried to murder me. Damian, my youngest, walked behind me. His footsteps were steady, calm, as if nothing weighed on his conscience. Melissa, his wife, led the way with her bright smile, camera in hand, insisting on capturing every moment. "Mom, Dad, let's take a photo up there," she said, pointing to a rocky outcrop that jutted over the gorge. Her tone was cheerful, even affectionate, but in hindsight it was the voice of a predator leading prey to the slaughter. Henry and I followed. My husband was breathing hard. Hiking was never easy for him, not at his age, but he pushed forward with determination. We trusted our children. Why would we ever suspect danger from those we raised, from those we loved more than life itself? When we reached the ledge, the view was breathtaking, a 90-foot drop into a gorge where a river wound like a silver thread far below. I remember gasping, not from fear, but from awe. "It's beautiful," I whispered, clutching Henry's hand. We posed together, smiling weakly for Melissa's camera. She lifted it, adjusted the focus, and said sweetly, "Step back just a little, so we get the valley in the shot." We obeyed. That single step back brought us closer to the abyss. Then it happened. A sudden, violent shove against my back. I stumbled, my arms flailing, and Henry cried out beside me. For one fleeting instant, I thought it was an accident, that someone had tripped. But the look on Damian's face as he stood over us erased that hope forever. His expression was cold, controlled, his eyes devoid of remorse. My own son. My flesh and blood. "Mom, Dad." Melissa screamed, but it wasn't a cry of horror. It was rehearsed, a performance. Her hand reached out, not to save us, but to push harder, to ensure we went over. The world tilted. The ground vanished beneath my feet. For a split second, I felt weightless, suspended between life and death. Then gravity took me, and I was falling. The scream tore from my throat but was swallowed by the rush of wind. My body slammed against rocks on the way down, pain exploding in my ribs, my arm, my skull. The sharp metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. I heard Henry's voice, broken, desperate, shouting my name as he fell beside me. The gorge swallowed us whole. The impact at the bottom was devastating. I landed twisted among jagged stones, my lungs screaming for air, my leg bent at an unnatural angle. Every nerve in my body was ablaze with agony. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was feel the horror of betrayal burn hotter than the pain in my bones. Above me, the sky seemed impossibly far away, framed by cliffs like prison walls. I tried to cry out, but the only sound that came was a ragged gasp. Henry lay a few feet away, blood staining his shirt, his chest heaving. His voice, hoarse but urgent, reached me. "Hilda, don't move. Play dead." At first, I didn't understand. My mind was fogged with terror, disbelief, and pain. Play dead? How could I pretend anything when my body was shattered? But then I saw it, shadows moving at the edge of the cliff above us. Damian and Melissa were looking down. Watching. Waiting. If they saw us move, they would come down to finish what they started. My heart thundered, but I forced myself to lie still, my eyes half open, fixed on nothing. The taste of dirt and blood filled my mouth. Every instinct screamed at me to cough, to groan, to cry out. But Henry's whisper echoed in my head, "Play dead." In that agonizing stillness, the memories flooded me. Holding Damian as a baby, his small hand wrapped around my finger. Rocking him to sleep when he was feverish. Teaching him to pray at night, his soft voice reciting words he no longer believed in. All those years of sacrifice, of love, of patience, what had they led to? To this moment, where my child had become my executioner. I wanted to weep, to scream, to demand an answer. But my body lay frozen, a corpse pretending to accept its fate. The seconds dragged like hours. My chest ached as I struggled to control my breathing. I could hear Melissa's voice above, faint but clear. It worked. They're not moving. Damian's reply was colder. Good. Now it's just a matter of time. Shock and horror coursed through me, mingling with the pain until I could no longer separate them. My son had killed his brother 25 years ago. I didn't know that truth yet, but in that moment, I felt the weight of all his darkness pressing down on me. And now, he had tried to erase his parents too, for money, for greed, for reasons I could never comprehend. At the bottom of that gorge, bleeding, broken, betrayed, I realized my life had been shattered in more ways than one. My body might still cling to life, but the illusion of family, the belief that blood meant loyalty, that love was unconditional, was dead. Shock had turned my veins to ice. Horror had rooted me to the stones. But beneath it, in the faintest flicker of my heart, something else began to grow, the desperate will to survive. Not for Damian. Not for Melissa. Not even for myself. But for the truth. For Richard. For the chance to make sure the world knew what my son had become. And so, with every ounce of strength I had left, I lay still. A corpse in appearance. A mother in agony. A woman betrayed. Lying broken at the bottom of the gorge, I felt the edges of my consciousness blur, and my mind, perhaps to shield me from the unbearable pain, drifted back to the past. Memories surfaced, unbidden, shimmering like ghosts, a different time, a different life, when the word family meant warmth and safety, not betrayal and death. I remembered the early years of my marriage to Henry. We were so young, so poor, but so full of hope. Henry would come home from his workshop with sawdust in his hair, his hands rough from shaping wood, and yet he would scoop me up in his arms as though I weighed nothing. We laughed easily back then. We dreamed about the house we would one day own, the children we would raise. I thought those dreams had come true. For decades, I believed I had everything a woman could want, a faithful husband, a cozy home, and 2 sons who would carry our legacy forward. Richard. Damian. My boys. Richard came first, our golden child. From the moment he took his first breath, his light filled our lives. He was everything a mother could hope for, cheerful, affectionate, bright, and endlessly kind. Even as a little boy, he looked after me. If I burned my hand on the stove, he would run for a cold cloth. If I felt tired after teaching, he would sit beside me and chatter about his day until laughter chased away the fatigue. When he turned 16, he told me, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll always be here to take care of you and Dad." I believed him. I never doubted his word. Damian came next. He was different from Richard from the start. Quieter, moodier, prone to sulking when he didn't get his way. I loved him just as fiercely, but it was harder. Where Richard excelled at school, Damian lagged. Where Richard made friends easily, Damian struggled, often withdrawing into himself. I worried, but I told myself it was just temperament, that he would grow out of it. I defended him when teachers complained, when neighbors whispered. I told everyone, he just needs time. We were a family. We had dinners together around the oak table Henry built with his own hands. On Sundays, we went to church, then to the park where Richard and Damian would chase each other across the grass while Henry and I held hands on a bench. At Christmas, we decorated the tree together, Richard carefully hanging each ornament, Damian pouting because his brother always seemed to do it better. But when they curled up together by the fire afterward, their differences melted away, and I would smile, believing everything was as it should be. Then came the day everything shattered. Richard was 20. He had been planning his future, talking about starting a small business with Henry, expanding the carpentry shop. One afternoon, he left for a walk near the cliffs, a walk he had taken countless times before. Hours later, the police arrived. Their words still echo, "Your son fell. We're so sorry. It looks like a tragic accident." I remember the scream that tore from my throat. I remember clinging to Henry, demanding answers, demanding it not be true. But the coffin at the funeral left no room for denial. Richard was gone. Just like that, my golden boy, my protector, the light of our lives, snuffed out. At the funeral, I noticed something strange. Damian stood stiff and pale, his face expressionless. While everyone else wept, he seemed almost detached. I tried to tell myself it was just his way of grieving. Not everyone shows pain the same way. But deep down, a seed of doubt was planted. My sister Harriet even whispered to me later, "Hilda, something about Damian doesn't sit right with me. He isn't mourning like a brother should." I silenced her sharply. I couldn't bear the thought. I refused to believe it. Still, after Richard's death, Damian changed, or perhaps revealed more of himself. He began to act more attentive, more involved. He helped around the house, spoke more kindly, even accompanied me to church when I asked. For a while, I thought he was trying to fill the hole Richard had left. I wanted so desperately to believe that. I clung to it, even when his eyes sometimes held a coldness that unsettled me. Henry, too, grew quieter after Richard's death. He would sit long hours in his workshop, carving pieces he never showed anyone. I would find him staring at Richard's photograph, tears shining in his eyes, but he never spoke much about it. I thought it was just grief. I didn't know then that it was guilt. For years, I lived with that loss. Every Christmas, Richard's absence was a wound that never healed. Every family gathering, every birthday, there was always a missing seat at the table. Damian married Melissa, had children of his own, and for a time I allowed myself to believe life could still hold beauty. I doted on my grandchildren. I baked cakes for birthdays, knitted sweaters for winter. I convinced myself that my love for Damian and his family was enough to soothe the ache of losing Richard. But lying broken at the bottom of that gorge, betrayed by the very son I had defended all my life, the memories twisted like knives. Richard's smile. His promise to care for me. His coffin. And Damian's cold hands on my back as he shoved me toward death. The contrast was unbearable. My mind reeled between the joy of what we had been and the horror of what we had become. My family, once the source of my pride, was now my greatest curse. The son I had grieved for was the one who had loved me. The son I had protected was the one who wanted me dead. 40 years of marriage. Decades of motherhood. All of it unraveled in that moment of clarity. I had lost Richard long ago, but in a way, I had lost Damian too. I had lost the illusion of family itself. The weight of that loss pressed harder on my chest than the rocks that pinned me down. I wanted to scream, to tear the sky open with my grief. But no sound came. Only silent tears slid down my face, mixing with the dirt and blood. It was in that silence, in the hollow ache of memory and mourning, that I understood, my life had been built on love and lies in equal measure. Richard's love. Damian's lies. And now, in the ruins of both, I had to decide whether I would let the grief consume me, or rise from it. As I lay broken at the bottom of the gorge, pretending to be dead so Damian and Melissa wouldn't finish us off, Henry reached for my hand. His palm was trembling, clammy with fear and blood. That touch, once a source of comfort, now carried a dreadful weight. I turned to look into his eyes, the same eyes that had been my safe harbor for 40 years, and I knew instantly, he had been hiding something from me. "There's something I never told you," Henry whispered, his voice shallow, each word dragged out as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. His chest rose and fell with the struggle of broken ribs. I felt my heart clench. This was not the time for confessions. We were clinging to life by a thread, and yet he chose now to unearth the past. "It's about Richard," he said. The name alone was enough to make my breath catch. Richard, my firstborn, my pride, my protector. The son I had buried 25 years ago, convinced his death was a tragic accident. I had mourned him every day since, lit candles for him in church, whispered prayers into the silence of my pillow. The grief had carved me hollow, but at least I believed fate, not malice, had taken him. But Henry's tone, it was not the voice of comfort. It was the voice of a man shackled by guilt. My lips trembled. "Say it, Henry. Please." He closed his eyes for a moment, as though summoning the courage to damn himself. Then, with a voice like a knife cutting through my soul, he said, "Richard didn't die in an accident. I saw it." Damian pushed him. The world spun. My blood ran cold, my body frozen as though struck by lightning. No. This couldn't be real. My Damian, the quiet boy, the one I cradled in my arms, the one I swore to love equally as his older brother, was the killer? I shook my head violently. Tears burst from my eyes. No, no, Henry. He was just 15. He would never, he couldn't. But Henry's voice carried no hesitation now, only the crushing weight of truth. I followed them that night. Richard had discovered Damian was stealing money from our savings. He threatened to tell us everything. They fought near the gorge. They screamed. Richard waved the proof in his hand. And then I saw Damian push him. A scream tore inside me but never left my throat. In my mind's eye, I saw it, Richard, desperate, reaching out for something to hold, his body staggering on the edge of darkness. Damian, his own brother, fueled by rage and envy, shoving him into oblivion. I pressed my hands to my face, sobbing into the dirt and blood. 25 years of memories collapsed under the weight of that revelation. I had lived side by side with my son's killer. I had cooked for him, kissed his cheek, celebrated his birthdays, defended him when others doubted him. I had loved him unconditionally, while all along, he carried Richard's death on his conscience. Why didn't you tell me? My voice was broken glass, sharp and brittle. Henry turned away, tears glistening in his eyes. Because I was weak. Because Richard was already gone, and I couldn't bear to lose Damian too. He begged me, Hilda. He cried. He said it was an accident, that he hadn't meant to. I needed to believe him. His confession split me open anew. My husband, my partner, the man who had sworn to share every burden, had chosen silence. He had buried the truth, letting me grieve a false version of reality. Through gritted teeth, I spat out my agony. You let me live a lie for 25 years. You watched me light candles for Richard, you heard me weep for him as if fate stole him. And all the while, you knew. You knew our son was murdered, by our other son. By the boy I still called my baby. Henry wept like a child, his shoulders shaking. I had seen him cry only once before, the day Richard was buried. Now, his sobs were heavier, uglier, filled with the rotting guilt of decades. I thought I was protecting you, he choked out. But I was protecting myself. From your anger. From my own shame. From admitting I had covered for a killer, our own son. The words gutted me. I was not just betrayed by Damian. I was betrayed by Henry too. The family I had believed unbreakable was nothing but a hollow shell, plastered with secrets and rotting from within. I thought of Richard again, the boy with laughter in his eyes, who shielded me from every worry, who dreamed of becoming an engineer, who promised to take care of us when we grew old. And I thought of Damian, the boy I cradled after nightmares, the boy who had looked so small and fragile in my arms. How blind I had been. How cruelly naive. The pain in my chest was more than broken ribs. It was the pain of a mother who realized she had embraced her son's murderer for a quarter of a century. Henry continued, his voice cracking. Damian promised he'd repay the money. That he'd change. I believed him. Every day since, I've watched him. I thought, maybe losing Richard had taught him. But no. He never stopped stealing. And I never stopped keeping your eyes shut. I turned to him, my face streaked with tears and dirt. You both betrayed me. Damian with his crime. You with your silence. I thought I had lost one son that night. But the truth is, I lost them both. And the husband I thought I knew as well. Henry bowed his head in shame, unable to look at me. In that moment, lying broken at the bottom of the gorge, I realized I was not just crushed by rock and bone. I was crushed by the weight of truth, a truth so monstrous it poisoned every memory of love and family I had ever cherished. My grief was no longer the grief of a mother who lost her son to fate. It was the grief of a mother who lost one son to murder, the other to his own cruelty, and her husband to cowardice. Betrayal had become my new name. Pain had become my blood. And yet, in that abyss of despair, one thing burned inside me: I would not die silently. If my family had been destroyed by lies, then I would drag the truth into the light, even if it cost me the last drop of life I had left. Great, I'll now write idea 4, Despair and Deception in English, about 1,000 words, keeping the emotional tone heavy, tense, and cinematic. This is the part where Hilda and Henry, knowing the truth, are forced to go along with Damian and Melissa's murderous plan under the guise of a family hiking trip. Idea 4, Despair and Deception, 1,000 words, English. After Henry's confession about Richard, my world had already shattered into pieces. But before I could even gather the fragments of my broken soul, a new, even more terrifying reality took its place: Damian and Melissa were planning to kill us. They came to the house more often now, smiling sweetly, carrying gifts, talking about family time. To anyone else, they looked like the perfect caring children. But to me, every smile was a mask, every touch was poison. One evening, Damian spread a map across our kitchen table, his voice full of excitement. "Mom, Dad, this weekend we should go to the mountains. You've always said you wanted to see the valley from above. It would be a perfect way to celebrate your 40th anniversary." Melissa chimed in with her practiced sweetness: "We'll take pictures, make a picnic, and create memories you'll never forget." Her words made my blood run cold. I exchanged a glance with Henry. We both knew. This wasn't a gift. It was a death sentence wrapped in ribbons. We couldn't refuse. Any excuse might arouse suspicion, and Damian was not a boy anymore, he was a man who had killed before. If he sensed hesitation, he would find another way to end us, perhaps more brutally. That night, as I lay in bed beside Henry, I whispered into the dark. "We might not come back." Henry squeezed my hand, his voice trembling. "If we die together. But I'll try to leave evidence. I won't let Damian bury the truth again." He showed me his phone, already set to record. "If nothing else, the world will know." The morning of the trip, the sky was painfully beautiful. Damian arrived whistling, Melissa glowing as if this truly was a celebration. They packed fruit, water, ropes, a first aid kit. To anyone watching, it looked like a cheerful family outing. To me, it was our funeral procession. In the car, Melissa hummed along to a cheerful song, her voice light, her hands resting on Damian's knee. I sat frozen in the back seat, watching the trees rush by, knowing each mile brought us closer to death. At one point, Damian glanced at us in the mirror and said, almost tenderly, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll always be right behind you on the trail. If you slip, I'll catch you." The words might have sounded comforting, but to me, they were a cruel mockery. If I slipped, it would be because he shoved me. If I fell, it would be because he wanted me gone. The trail was steep but scenic, winding between trees and rocks. My legs burned, my chest ached, but I forced myself onward. Melissa walked ahead, pointing out flowers, snapping photos with her new camera, laughing like a child. Her performance was flawless, any stranger would have thought she adored us. But every time I saw her raise that camera, I imagined the photo she truly wanted, our broken bodies at the bottom of the gorge. After an hour, she stopped suddenly, pointing to a narrow path that veered off toward a rocky cliff. "Look. That's perfect for pictures. The view of the valley from up there must be incredible." I froze. The path was narrow, the ground loose, the cliff rising ominously over a sheer drop. Everything about it screamed trap. "That looks dangerous," I stammered. "Maybe we should stay here." Damian placed a hand on my back, his touch deceptively gentle but firm. "Come on, Mom. It'll only take a few minutes. You'll regret it if you don't see the view. Trust me." His words sliced through me. Trust me. The same words I had told him when he was a boy afraid of thunderstorms. The same words Richard might have used with his younger brother before that night by the gorge. Now they were poison. I looked at Henry. His face was pale, drenched in sweat, but he gave me a subtle nod. We had no choice. Refusing now would only confirm to Damian that we knew too much. The climb was agonizing. Every rock that crumbled under my feet felt like a warning. The valley opened wide beneath us, breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. This was it, the place they had chosen for our execution. Melissa was already at the top, smiling, her camera ready. "Come closer," she called out. "Stand together. Hug each other. The background is amazing." Henry and I moved slowly, clinging to each other, each step echoing with dread. Behind us, I felt Damian's presence like a shadow, his breath hot on the back of my neck. We reached the edge. The valley spread out below, golden in the afternoon sun, beautiful enough to break your heart. In another life, this might have been a moment of joy, a memory to treasure. But here, now, it was a stage for murder. Melissa raised the camera. "Smile," she said sweetly. "This will be the best photo yet." Henry wrapped his arm around me. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile. Inside, my soul was screaming. Damian's footsteps crunched behind us. He was positioning himself, calculating the angle, the force it would take to send us into the void. In that moment, despair consumed me. I thought of Richard, of the years I had believed his death was an accident. I thought of Damian, my youngest, the baby I once nursed, the boy I once defended. I thought of Henry, who had kept the truth from me, and of how little time we might have left. I realized then that we weren't just standing on the edge of a cliff. We were standing on the edge of everything, our lives, our family, our illusions. And with Melissa's voice chirping "say cheese," and Damian's shadow looming closer, I understood one thing with a clarity sharper than fear itself: this was the endgame. The last thing I remembered was the sound of the earth giving way beneath our feet, the scream of the wind as the four of us plummeted into the gorge, and the hollow roar of fate swallowing us whole. I thought it was the end. I thought death had finally claimed me the way it had claimed Richard 25 years ago. But then I opened my eyes. Pain ripped through me, every bone screaming, every breath of fire in my chest, but I was alive. Blood pooled in my mouth, metallic and bitter, yet the agony itself was proof I had survived. Henry lay a few feet away, his body twisted, his face pale. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought I had lost him too. But then his lips moved, barely a whisper. "Hilda, don't move. Pretend you're dead." I understood instantly. Just above us, Damian and Melissa stirred, groaning. They were alive too, and if they realized we had survived, they would finish the job. I bit down on my screams, forcing my body to remain still, limp, lifeless. My husband's voice echoed in my mind like a commandment: "Play dead." Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Damian's voice, weak but still filled with venom. "They're gone. Both of them. Eyes open, no breathing." It worked. Melissa let out a cruel, relieved laugh. "Finally. Now everything is ours." The words cut deeper than the fall itself. But Henry, even through his broken body, managed to reach into his jacket pocket and press a button. His phone began recording, our one fragile weapon against the lies. Hours passed like centuries. Eventually, the rescue team came, ropes clinking against rock, voices calling through the gorge. Damian played his part well, shouting in feigned anguish. My parents fell. "Please, help us." Melissa sobbed theatrically, her voice a melody of deceit. "It was just an accident. We tried to save them." I kept still, my breath shallow. When the rescuers found us, I heard one whisper: the man still alive, pulse weak, the woman, faint, but there. I was strapped to a stretcher, carried out of the abyss like a corpse, but inside, a flame flickered. The truth had survived with me. At the hospital, the performance continued. Melissa wept beside my bed, stroking my hand with false tenderness. "You were like a mother to me," she whispered. "I'll never forget you." Her touch made me want to scream, but I stayed silent. And then Damian leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear, and whispered words that froze my blood. "You should never have asked so many questions, Mom. Some truths are better left buried, like Richard." He didn't realize a nurse was standing just behind him. She heard every word. Her eyes widened, and in that instant, I knew, we were no longer alone. That nurse, bless her courage, alerted the doctor. Soon, detectives entered my room. I opened my eyes for the first time in days, meeting their gaze with all the strength I could muster. My voice was a raspy whisper, but it carried decades of buried truth. My son and his wife tried to kill us. And 25 years ago, Damian murdered his brother Richard. The investigation unraveled everything. Henry's phone recording captured Damian and Melissa's confession by the gorge, their laughter, their plans, their lies. Financial records revealed years of theft and forgery. Witnesses came forward, recalling Damian's debts and Melissa's manipulative questions about our assets. Piece by piece, the facade crumbled. The trial was brutal. Facing my son in court, I no longer saw the boy I once rocked to sleep. I saw a man hollowed out by greed, a stranger wearing the face of my child. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke directly to him. "Damian, the son I loved died the night Richard fell. What stands before me now is not family. It's the shadow of a boy consumed by envy, the man who tried to murder his own parents for money. You are no longer my son." The jury deliberated only 3 days. Guilty. Murder. Attempted murder. Fraud. Theft. Both Damian and Melissa were sentenced to life in prison without parole. Their cries, their blame-shifting, their desperate lies fell on deaf ears. Justice had finally been served. But justice, though satisfying, did not erase the scars. Healing was slow, both of the body and the soul. Henry and I sold the old house, the place that once rang with laughter but now carried only ghosts. We could not breathe in its rooms without tasting betrayal. With the money, we bought a small place by the sea. There, the air was clean, the horizon endless, and the sound of waves washed away years of sorrow. For the first time, I felt free. I opened a little bakery, naming it Phoenix Bakery. Each loaf of bread, each tray of pastries, was a symbol of rebirth. Just like the phoenix, I had burned in the fire of betrayal and risen from the ashes, stronger than before. Customers came not only for the sweets but for the warmth of the place. I greeted them with a smile, carrying the wisdom of a woman who had walked through fire and survived. Behind the counter hung a golden sign with the image of a rising phoenix, my silent testimony that no betrayal, no lie, no fall could ever keep me buried. Henry sat by the window most days, Kane by his side, a soft smile on his face as he watched me work. We reconnected with family and friends, rebuilt bonds we thought had been lost. On quiet evenings, we walked along the beach, hand in hand, just as we once did in the suburban trails of our youth. Except now, each step felt heavier with truth, but lighter with freedom.